There is a plain plastic bucket sitting in the shade behind an old dairy barn in Holmes County. It is dark green, the kind you might buy for under $3 at a farm supply store, and most people driving past it would never look twice. Inside, the water is cloudy, a little smelly, with a few blades of dried grass floating on top. It looks like something nobody got around to dumping out. But that bucket, sitting quietly in the shade, is doing a job that some homeowners now pay companies several $100s a season to do with a tank, a hose, and a truck that drives down the street every 3 weeks. The Amish family who keeps that bucket did not buy it to be clever. They kept using it because year after year it worked. And the strange part is, the company selling the expensive version down the road understands the exact same principle. They have just never had a reason to explain it to you in a way that costs them a customer. Let's start with what most of us already know in our bones. Summer comes, and somewhere around the second week of June, the bites start. You sit on the porch after dinner, and within minutes you are slapping at your ankles. You buy the citronella candles. You line them up along the railing, and they smell nice for about 20 minutes before the breeze carries the smoke away, and the mosquitoes come right back. You buy the bug zapper, the blue light one, and it hangs there making a satisfying little snap every so often. But somehow you are still covered in bites by the end of the night. You spray yourself, you spray your kids, you spray the dog, and the can runs empty within a week if anyone in the house actually goes outside. Some of you have gone further. You have called the mosquito truck. A guy in a uniform shows up every 2 or 3 weeks, sprays a fog along your fence line, and hands you a bill. By August, you have spent more on mosquito control than you spent fixing your air conditioner. And you still get bitten the moment you forget to reapply. Here is the part that should bother you a little. None of that is solving the actual problem. It is treating the air around you over and over on a schedule forever. And forever is exactly how a service business stays in business. Old farm households did not have that option. There was no truck. There was no can of spray strong enough to cover 40 acres, and there was no budget for one even if there had been. So they had to solve the problem at its source, because solving it any other way was not available to them. In many Amish farm communities, and in plenty of non-Amish rural households right alongside them, this kind of close attention to water, heat, insects, and soil was not a hobby. It was how the family stayed comfortable and how the animals stayed healthy. You watched the weather because you had no air conditioning. You watched the water because you had no spray truck. Old farm households understood something simple that a lot of modern homeowners have simply never been taught. If you want to get rid of a pest for good, you do not chase the pest. You find out where the pest is being born, and you change that one thing. That brings us to the first idea you need to understand, because almost everyone gets it backward. Most people think mosquitoes are a flying problem. They are not. They are a water problem wearing wings. A female mosquito does not lay her eggs on your skin, your porch, or your grass. She lays them in standing water, and her eggs cannot become biting adults without it. No standing water, no mosquitoes, no matter how loud the zapper is or how many candles you burn. Every adult mosquito flying around your yard right now hatched out of some forgotten puddle, some clogged gutter, some overturned wheelbarrow, some kiddie pool nobody emptied after the rain. The flying insect annoying you tonight is just the last visible stage of a problem that started in still water, often less than 100 feet from where you are sitting. Once you understand that, the old method starts to make perfect sense, and the spray can in your hand starts to look like exactly what it is, a way of fighting the symptom while leaving the cause completely alone. But the most important part of this video is not the standing water itself. It is what you do with the water you cannot get rid of. Keep that in mind because we are going to come back to it. The biology behind this is not complicated, and you do not need a degree to follow it. A mosquito egg needs roughly a week of warm, still water to become a flying adult. That single week is the entire window where the problem can be stopped easily, cheaply, and permanently for that batch. Once the insect takes flight, you have already lost the easy part of the fight. This is the part most modern pest control leaves out entirely, because there is very little profit in telling a homeowner to dump out a bucket. There is a great deal of profit in convincing a homeowner to spray their entire yard every few weeks for the rest of the summer. So here is where the old farmhouse method begins, and it begins with a walk, not a purchase. Old farm households called it different things depending on the region, but the idea was the same. Go around the property after every heavy rain and look for anything that holds still water for more than 4 or 5 days. A clogged gutter, an old tire leaning against the barn, a wheelbarrow left tipped the wrong way, a bucket under a downspout, a tarp with a low spot where rain pools, a children's wading pool that did not get drained, a pet's water dish that never gets dumped and refilled. Old farm wives walked this same loop every few days because they understood that a 5-gallon bucket of forgotten rainwater could produce more bites in a season than the entire pond down by the woods. The pond has fish in it, and fish eat mosquito larvae before they ever finish growing. The bucket has nothing, and nothing keeps the babies safe until they fly. But walking the property only fixes what you can find and dump. Some water cannot be removed, and this is where most modern guides quietly stop being useful. You cannot drain a livestock trough. You cannot drain a rain barrel you are using to water the garden. You cannot drain an ornamental pond or a low spot in the field that floods every spring and stays wet for weeks. For that water, old households used a slower, more patient method, and it is the part of this video that most people watching have genuinely never heard of. It is called a gravid trap, though nobody on an Amish farm ever called it that. They just called it the bucket. You take a dark-colored 5-gallon bucket, not a white one, because mosquitoes are drawn toward dark, sheltered places that feel safe for laying eggs. You set it in shade, away from the porch, away from where children play, somewhere along a fence line or the shaded side of a shed. You fill it about halfway with water, and then you add a handful of dried grass clippings, straw, or hay, and let it sit for 2 or 3 days before you use it seriously. The grass begins to ferment slightly in the warmth, and that fermentation releases a smell that a human barely notices, but that a female mosquito finds almost irresistible. To her, it smells exactly like the kind of nutrient-rich water her young will need to survive. She is drawn to lay her eggs in that bucket instead of in your gutter, your dish, or your neighbor's forgotten tire. Here is the part that makes this method actually work instead of becoming one more breeding ground in your yard. You have to empty it. Every 4 to 5 days, you dump that water out onto dry ground, away from any drain, rinse the bucket, and start the mixture fresh. If you forget and let it run a full week or longer, you have built yourself a hatchery instead of a trap. And that single mistake is the most common reason this method fails for people who try it once and give up. The trap only works because you are interrupting the cycle before it finishes, not because the bucket itself kills anything. Set a reminder on your phone if you need to. The whole method depends on that one habit, and it is the one detail most short videos on this topic leave out entirely. For water you genuinely cannot drain and cannot dump on a schedule, like a rain barrel feeding your garden hose or a livestock trough your animals depend on daily, there is a second tool, and this is the one most people have never been told actually exists outside of a farm supply catalog. It is a naturally occurring bacterium called Bacillus thuringiensis israelensis, usually shortened on the label to BTI. It comes as small donut-shaped dunks or as loose granules, and you simply drop it into standing water you cannot remove. A single dunk, costing somewhere between $5 and $12 depending on where you buy it, will typically treat roughly 100 square feet of water surface for around 30 days before it needs replacing. You can find it at most hardware stores, farm supply stores, and garden centers, usually sitting quietly on a low shelf near the pond supplies, with almost no marketing behind it at all. Here is why it matters that it is safe around bees, pets, and other animals. And this is the part worth slowing down for. BTI works almost like a lock and key. The bacterium produces a protein that has to bind to a very specific receptor inside the gut of certain young insects, mainly mosquito larvae and a few related flies, while they are still living and feeding underwater. Bees do not have that receptor. Dogs, cats, birds, fish, and people do not have that receptor either. So the key simply does not fit any lock except the one it was shaped for. That is the whole game, and it is the part most spray products cannot say about themselves. Because most spray products are built to be broad and indiscriminate, killing whatever crosses their path, pollinators included. When you choose a dunk for the trough or the rain barrel, you are not fogging your whole yard with something that does not care what it lands on. You are placing a narrow, targeted tool exactly where the problem begins and nowhere else. I want to be plain about something here because trust matters more than excitement in a video like this one. BTI only works in water on larvae before they take flight. It does nothing to the adult mosquitoes already buzzing around your porch tonight, and it will not clear a yard in one evening. It is not a fast fix, and anyone telling you it is has not actually used it. Read the label every time because formulations and dosages vary by brand, and some combination products on store shelves mix BTI with other chemicals that are not nearly as gentle. If a label lists something beyond BTI as the active ingredient, set it back down and choose a different one. Keep it stored away from children, follow the application rate printed on the package, and do not assume that because something is natural it cannot be misused. Used the wrong way, even a simple thing can cause a problem it was never meant to cause. There are limits here too, and I am not going to pretend otherwise. This will not kill every mosquito in your county, and no honest method will, no matter what a title promises you. If your property backs up to a swamp, a slow creek, or a large public wetland, you are dealing with breeding grounds that are not yours to drain or treat, and a bucket trap in your backyard is not going to compete with acres of natural standing water nearby. In situations like that, contacting your local mosquito control district or a licensed pest professional is the right call, not a failure of the old method. This approach is built for the water on your own property, the water you control, the water that is quietly producing the mosquitoes biting you specifically. For that water, it works extremely well. For somebody else's swamp, it was never designed to. There is one more layer worth mentioning, mainly for the evenings you actually want to sit outside. Old households leaned on plants and oils with strong natural scents, things like cedar, citronella grass, and certain mints, planted near the porch or rubbed onto skin in small amounts. These do not kill anything. They mask the carbon dioxide and skin scent that draws mosquitoes toward you in the first place, the same way smoke from a campfire makes you briefly harder to find. The effect is real but short-lived, usually less than an hour or two before it fades and needs renewing. Think of it as a curtain, not a wall. It is a pleasant addition to the bucket and the dunk, not a replacement for either one. And this is where the story gets a little uncomfortable. Now ask yourself a simple question. If a dark bucket of fermenting grass clippings and a $5 dunk can interrupt a mosquito's entire life cycle at almost no cost, why does almost nobody talk about it? The honest answer is not some secret meeting in a boardroom somewhere. It is simpler and a little sadder than that. A bucket does not need a subscription. A dunk you buy twice a summer does not generate a route for a truck to drive down your street every 3 weeks. There is no app for emptying a bucket every 4 days, and nobody earns a commission for telling you to do it. A neighbor down the road might pay close to $800 a season for a service that drives by, sprays the fence line, and leaves, and that is a perfectly reasonable choice if that is what fits their life. But it is worth knowing before you write that check again that the same neighbor's gutters might still be holding a half-inch of standing water the spray truck never touches. And never will, because spraying the air was never going to fix what was happening in the gutter. This was not erased on purpose, the way some people like to imagine it. Knowledge like this fades for a much quieter reason. It fades because nobody profits from teaching it, and so it simply stops getting passed down, generation after generation, until a grandmother's habit of walking the yard after a rainstorm looks less like wisdom and more like an old woman with nothing better to do. She knew exactly what she was doing. She was breaking a cycle before it started, the same cycle a chemical company would much rather sell you a seasonal answer to. Picture a kitchen table in an old farmhouse. At the end of June, the screen door propped open, a few moths circling the porch light outside, while everyone inside stays mostly unbothered. Nobody at that table is talking about parts per million or chemical compounds. Somebody just walked the yard that morning, dumped 2 buckets that did not need to be there, and dropped a dunk into the trough on the way back in. That is the entire secret. It was never complicated. It was just unglamorous, and unglamorous things do not get advertised. The lesson here is not that every old method beats every modern one. Plenty of old habits faded away because something better came along, and there is no use pretending otherwise. But some methods did not disappear because they stopped working. They disappeared because they were too simple, too cheap, and too easy to do yourself to ever build a business around. A dark bucket behind the barn, a handful of grass clippings, a dunk from the bottom shelf at the farm store. None of that needs a contract or a route or a monthly bill. It just needs you to walk the yard, find the standing water, and do something about it before the eggs finish hatching. Your grandfather may have known some version of this without ever putting a name to it. Most modern homeowners were simply never taught it, not because it was hidden, but because nobody had a reason to teach it. Now you do. The past was not behind us this whole time. Sometimes it was just sitting quietly in a bucket in the shade, waiting for somebody to look again. In the next video, we are going to look at another old farmhouse method, one that most modern homeowners walk past every single day without realizing it already solved a problem they are still paying somebody else to fix.